Lee and Blake Lovell here from Southeastern 14, where we're going to be doing some bracketology with especially an eye on the SEC. Two things. I've had a little bit of a cold I can't seem to shake, so excuse the sniffles or the sneezes or whatever is coming your way. And number two, we are not the committee. We try our best to think like the committee. We will try to outline all the possibilities and interesting things. But we're not perfect. We can't read minds, but we have done a ton of homework, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I would like to point out too, like we do. I mean, Rocco's an example, right? When we had Rocco on a couple weeks ago now, and like we do talk to people who do talk to people that are on that committee and understand like the process and how it works. So I do want to point that out as well. Like you said, there's the chances of you being perfect in a bracketology is very slim at this point, but you try to use the metrics and everything you have in front of you to kind of match what you think the committee's going to do, right? And that's always the big guess. I mean, there have been many times where we go into that, the post show of the selection announcement, and you've got the committee chair up there answering questions, and maybe you get a different answer than you expected. And sometimes I think there are years where some things are valued more than others. So it's always a guessing game, but right now, at least, I think I'd say we have a pretty clear idea on a lot of different things. And like we said, I think Saturday in the SEC will impact that significantly depending on certain things, right? And we talked about it, whether that's a Florida beating Kentucky, whether that's maybe an A&M starting to sneak back into the conversation, or, maybe it's, any of the other scenarios that could play out. So I think that it's at least an interesting look thus far at where things stand in this bracket.
Speaking of just off the radar things, I'm looking on ESPN Strength of Resume this morning, which the committee does use. Do you know who's popped into the top 50 in Strength of Resume?
Is that an SEC team?
It is.
Is it Texas A&M?
Texas A&M is not there.
Well, I assume you were going to. I assume it was someone I was not thinking of, so that's why I went with them first. Is it Florida?
No, Florida was, I think, close or already there. No, Florida's already there at 48.
Mississippi State?
No.
South Carolina?
Yes. It's like, we have not even given lip service
that was number
to
4
Carolina as
a
tournament team. And I don't think they are, but we try to think of all the possibilities. And like another team I put on the deep radar this morning, South Dakota State. I think South Dakota State is going to get an at-large. No. I think it'll have to win the Summit, but I think that team's unbeaten in league play. And you just never know. I mean, if South Carolina goes in and wins 2-3 games in the tournaments and beats a Kentucky or an Auburn or something like that. I mean, you try to be prepared. Is South Carolina a bubble team right now? No, but I'm just saying we look at everything and sometimes there's something like, I didn't think of that, and that was this morning.
If there's any teams we're going to push, it's going to be an SEC team.
Oh, you
guarantee that. Listen, I know, contrary to some opinion, we have no biases when it comes to teams in the SEC, but we do have a bias when it comes to pushing the league as a whole, and we want
we
want the
root
league
for
to get as many
us.
teams
That's what we
as
root
possible.
for.
No, but we do. Like that's the thing is, like I said, we'd love to see as many teams as possible in there. It's funny because I can remember, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago. The SEC is doing really well, and we know me. I'm out there just having fun on Twitter and such, and I was, I'm pushing like 10 or 11 teams. I'm like, all right, I can tell you, like, let's compare this number 11 team to this team over here, and come on, let's make it happen. But no, that's what we root for. We root for as many teams as possible. So, South Carolina, do some work, and maybe got a shot.
Okay, let's go through 1 seeds. I've got them in this order: Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, Auburn. I'm not going to say that's the consensus right now, and I need to pull up Bracket Matrix, which you may. And Bracket Matrix sometimes is delayed by a day or two as people update their brackets or don't. But I think right now, Auburn is, I think, probably just climbed just that much ahead of Kansas. Looking at strength of resume, they're identical in the computers. If you average them out, you look at the quality, not the quality-based polls, but whatever you call them, BPI, Ken Pomeroy, Jeff Sagarin, that much ahead of Kansas. And I think the big thing, Auburn's got a 4 in the right-hand column, and Arizona's got a 6. That's the losses. Arizona's schedule, it's not Arizona, Kansas's schedule, that's who I'm trying to compare Auburn to, is a little harder, but I think 2 fewer losses, to me, that's kind of the tiebreak right now, because both have got some terrific wins.
Yeah, Kansas has got that's the thing, we talk about all the SEC stuff, but you can't ignore Kansas got a really good strength of schedule. What is it, 3 or 4 now, I think. So, I mean, that's something that I think is carrying them too. And we talked about the TCU situation. They lost that game on Tuesday, but they bounced back last night and beat TCU. A close game, good game. But now the opportunity for both Kansas and Auburn on Saturday are completely different, right? Because Kansas could beat Texas on Saturday. Auburn could beat South Carolina. That gives Kansas another significant win, right? So I think that is something just to kind of think about. In my opinion, and maybe I'm proven to be wrong here, because again, to me too, we have to know what's going to play out on Saturday, and then we have to know what the bracket and the path potentially looks like for these kind of teams in the tournament, because maybe that winds up being the difference is the conference tournaments. I don't know about that. I mean, certainly, if Kansas wins the Big 12 tournament, I think if you're Auburn, it's going to be hard to sneak in there, barring, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that, because remember too, in that scenario, Kansas would rack up probably at least 2 significant wins when you consider who they're going to be playing against in that tournament. So that's something I think you kind of think about, and we've talked about it before. It can be hit or miss sometimes on whether the committee, how much stock is put into those conference tournaments, especially for teams that are, kind of at that height and where some of these teams are. But I think that's at least something to think about. I tend to think if Auburn beats South Carolina, and let's say they win the first game of the SEC tournament, which would be that'd be in the quarterfinals, right? Is that right?
I'm going to pull up the tournament bracket. Auburn, as we have it pegged right now, we'll play A&M or Florida. I mean, that's if we nailed all our predictions yesterday.
Okay.
And assuming I didn't miss something with the 6-way tiebreak, which I did meticulously check, but anyway.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing is, when they get to the semis in the SEC, they're probably playing, if we just project
Arkansas.
it out. Well, and that's what I'm saying. If you project the higher seeds to advance, they're playing in Arkansas or someone like that. So even if they were to lose that one, probably doesn't hurt you. But I think that is worth thinking about. If you're Auburn, certainly you're looking at Kansas right now and knowing they got a big win opportunity on Saturday, and then they could have multiple big win opportunities in the Big 12 tournament. So I think that's where maybe you're a little bit hesitant, but I think it's just a matter of, how does it play out for both teams? And really it could come down to the conference tournament potentially to kind of decide that last one, because I do want to ask this too. Is that kind of the discussion we're at now? It's probably going to be Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, and either Auburn or Kansas, or what about like Kentucky? I think for a lot of people is maybe that next team behind there. What does that look like? And I know, listen, we've heard all the discussions on ESPN about Wisconsin. I don't think it's happening, but we have heard that kind of pushed a lot. Could Wisconsin kind of play their way into that number 1 line maybe? And I just think there's too many factors now to knock off either Auburn or Kansas, or does, let's say, a Kentucky winning the SEC tournament, does that change something? And that's just, I think that's an interesting scenario kind of I have in my mind too about that. So,
okay, this is just my opinion, but I'm looking at these teams, and I'm also looking at some really strong 2s. I think Gonzaga's the closest thing to a lock for being a 1, but what happens if something really crazy happens in the WCC tournament? Plus, I don't know who does Gonzaga play this weekend. Do we know?
Here, let me look it up. Baylor
I have
plays
I have a
Iowa
hard
State
time
this
thinking.
weekend.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm trying to look at. That's what I was. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's important too. Because Baylor plays Iowa State to wrap up this weekend. We said Kansas plays Texas. That's a bigger win opportunity there. Who else are we looking at? Arizona plays Cal. So if Arizona loses at home to Cal, you can throw Arizona off that list because that would be a bad loss. Meanwhile, Gonzaga. Is it even? Because remember, we're recording this. Sorry, I know this is bad television, but we're gonna. I want to look at the bracket here to make sure we have this right. So let's see. Is this the women's? Is the men's bracket or the women's bracket? All right. So Gonzaga will play. We don't know because they're not going to play until Monday, and there's a variety of factors on who they could play. So I guess we won't. I think San Francisco seems to be probably the best bet because they are pretty sure they're the number 4 seed in the WCC. So that's just again, but they don't play till Monday, so we won't know who they'll play. But I think the point is they have to avoid losing, right? Like you would think. I mean, I don't think they drop out of the one. I'm just being honest. I don't think there's any way that happens. And you said it; they're pretty much a lock. But I think there is still some variety there on what you get with these number 1 seeds.
Yeah, I mean, St. Mary's just beat them, right? And beat them, I think, by double digits. I think to me it's probably, if they lose in the finals or the quarters to St. Mary's or somebody, probably not going to knock them off. If they get beat by an 8 seed or something, just totally out of the box, then I think maybe it's open for discussion. But yeah, I think, you've seen Baylor and Kansas flip in the last week. I've flipped back and forth on Arizona and Auburn. Frankly, the Pac-12 just isn't that strong. And I think what Auburn's done, even though it's got one more loss, is more impressive. But I don't know that the committee will see it that way. But anyway, I think the point we're making, I don't know that these 1 seeds are as set in stone right now as not maybe people think. So I think there's a lot of basketball to be played. I think the conference tournaments, especially in the Big 12 and the SEC, are going to matter. But because let's say that if Baylor goes 0 for the tournament, doesn't rack up another good win, or Kansas does, but Auburn and Kentucky go get 2 or 3 more good wins against the 6 teams that we know are going to be in the tournament,
yeah,
then I think that matters. So point is, it's fluid. Let's move to the 2 line. I've got in this order. I've got Kansas, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Duke. Wisconsin is the team that everybody's going to have an issue with because the strength of resume measures, they're really high. Wisconsin just won the Big Ten with, I guess, a game to spare. Only 5 losses. Does have a quad 2 and a quad 3 loss. But I just think you look at who they've beaten and how many teams they've beaten. I mean, they've beaten 9, maybe 10 teams that are going to the tournament. And that's a lot. Wisconsin is going to be the team that people are going to have a hard time with. I look at them, there are 2 right now. Kentucky, there's no way you could argue anything other than a 2 at the moment. But again, could Kentucky slip to a 3 if things don't go their way in the SEC tournament? Sure. But I think that's the floor, and the ceiling may be a 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say there's a high probability Kentucky's sort of locked into the 2 right now. But again, let's say everything we just talked about with the 1s, maybe some of those teams have bad losses somewhere and Kentucky wins the SEC tournament. Could that matter? It could. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And that's the thing is, it kind of goes back to the discussion we had with Rocco on the committee doing a lot of their work before those, before you get to that semifinal or quarterfinal, perhaps in a power conference tournament like the SEC and such. So I think that's where it's do you value? We've had this discussion before. Do you value the whole body of work, or do you value, 2 or 3 days in Tampa? And I think that's kind of something that will be weighed. And you never know what the outcome's going to be on that. But if it's close, you have to put value into those 2 or 3 days in Tampa, right? Like you have to put some sort of value on that. So, yeah, I think it's Kentucky's in a good spot to me. I don't think there's any doubt about that because, like you said, I just don't see them dropping unless, I mean, if Kentucky loses to Florida, and then let's say they lose in the quarters to, I don't know, I don't take your pick, like A&M or someone, you know what I mean, like someone like that, perhaps. Maybe if some of these other teams and you start comparing, and again, we know the last 10 games stuff doesn't matter, but you are going to look at that and at least say, okay, well, last couple games they haven't played well and blah 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 and all this, but my guess is Kentucky, as of right now, I'm thinking they wind up as a 2, and I think it would take something really off and some stuff happening around them to fall below the 2. But
Okay, threes, I've got them in this order: Tennessee, Purdue, Texas Tech, Villanova. I could easily argue for Tennessee is maybe the last 2 right now. And maybe, again, depending on what you think of Wisconsin, maybe even the third 2. But, I mean, we have said this about Tennessee. Just solid across the board. You look at huge wins. I don't know that anybody in the country's got 3 better than Auburn, Arizona, and Kentucky, although those are all in Knoxville, and I guess that matters a little bit. Beating LSU. Now, beyond that, the issue for Tennessee is, in my mind, they've only beaten 4 teams that are for sure going to the NCAA tournament. Now, they've also got wins in against North Carolina and Florida, which I think have work to do, but no losses outside of quad 1. So I think for Tennessee, Blake, I could see them getting a 2. I don't know that a 1 is possible unless, again, they beat 3 teams that are going to the tournament, win the SEC. Then I think maybe that's in the discussion. One problem for Tennessee potentially, I've got them playing South Carolina and Mississippi State in the SEC tournament, so that's not really an opportunity for a win that probably moves you up a seed. Now, Tennessee does have Arkansas this weekend, so I neglected to mention that. You throw Arkansas in there, and that's 4 incredible wins. Again, all at home. But Tennessee hasn't been bad on the road. Tennessee's 6-5, 1-2 on neutral sites. Again, those are all tough games. Those are all quad 1 games. But Tennessee, to me, realistically, could get a 2. I don't see Tennessee falling beyond a 4, and that might even be a stretch.
yeah, I mean, we've said before, the good thing for Tennessee is they have no bad losses, and right now they will avoid that completely. Even if they lose to Arkansas, right? It's still, that's not a bad loss. So they'll avoid any bad losses in the regular season. Now, like you said, if they get a South Carolina, Mississippi State, and let's say they lose one of those, perhaps in the tournament, then okay. But still, the team's got a top 10 strength of schedule. We talked about one of the things too. I mean, it's clear as day. They're playing their best basketball of the season over the past month and a half, and that has value. And I mean, look, we talk about the scenarios that could play out here. We talk about, is it a long shot to get to a 1? Remember, 2, a lot of that's going to come down to these other teams. If the teams in front of them don't really move down all that much, it's going to be hard to move into that category. But if you are Tennessee and you're looking at the best case scenario, you beat Arkansas, you beat, let's say it is a South Carolina, Mississippi State. Then let's say you beat Auburn and Kentucky. So you beat your top 3 counterparts in the SEC. Let's say they win the SEC tournament. Then I think it makes it a lot more interesting. But I'm kind of with you. I think Tennessee's going to wind up being a 2 or 3. I don't think they drop any further than a 3 at this point, because I just don't. I mean, again, unless they lose to someone that's outside of that tournament group in the SEC tournament, perhaps that's a possibility, because we have to think too. It's not just in a bubble. It's about well, what happens if one of these other teams just makes a huge run behind them and all of a sudden their resume looks a lot better, and then you start playing the comparison game. But I think kind of like Kentucky and Auburn, and really these top 4 teams, in my opinion, Tennessee's in a spot where there's really nothing they can do at this point that's going to just damage their resume, right? I mean, again, even if they were to lose to Arkansas, which if you play the numbers, they're probably going to win because they've been undefeated at home this season and they've been fantastic. So, I mean, it's just, I think it's one of those where Tennessee's in a good spot because now, at worst, they can have, I don't even want to say it's like a bad loss, right? Because like you said, if South Carolina's resume is looking a lot better these days, and even if they lose to a team like that, I think it does nothing. So if I'm playing the prediction game on this one, I think Tennessee is absolutely no lower than a 3, and I think there's a real possibility that with a win on Saturday, they wind up being a 2.
I'm going to take a quick sidebar on the SEC. This conference tournament, man, I hate to use terms like ever because, like you said yesterday, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. But you look at the storylines in this, you got, I mean, first of all, just who wins it is one thing because you got some heavyweights battling it out. You got LSU healthy, could win the whole thing. Alabama, because you just never know what Alabama's going to do. You've got Florida playing for a berth in the NCAAs. You've got A&M, if it makes a run, maybe playing for a berth. Mississippi State and South Carolina. You know, South Carolina's the way off the radar, but if State wins a couple of games in this thing, you know, and beats the right teams, you know, and other teams don't do well, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Like, what more could you ask for? You've got even on Wednesday night, you've got the league's preseason player of the year playing on Wednesday night. It's crazy how good this is, and it sucks that of all the years for it to be in Tampa, where it's not in our backyard. Come on, man. What did the basketball gods do to us here?
Well, yeah, I mean it is like that Tampa discussion's for another day because I think we remember the last time it was in Tampa. I don't remember what year. I think we figured it out before, but I don't remember at this point. But it was not a great crowd. But I think it'll change this year because, you know, I think circumstances and just the league is a whole lot better than it was the last time they went to Tampa. So that helps. But no, I mean the tournament's going to be. It is. I mean there are so many different scenarios that are in play here, and I think that is going to make the tournament a lot more exciting. And like we said, that is going to, you know, it could potentially play a role in defining, you know, seeds for Auburn, for Kentucky, for Tennessee, you know, for Arkansas. Literally every team in the SEC, it could play a significant role, even if in years past there have been times where, let's say, a team makes a run and it really doesn't impact their seeding all that much. I think this year it could be so different because there is kind of that. You've got SEC teams that seem to have the potential to keep moving up, if that makes sense, versus I don't really think there's a lot of potential for these teams to move down. Like, not everyone, but for these top tier teams, I just don't think they can sort of do anything at this point to move down, except, I guess, in a scenario of, you know, an Auburn losing to South Carolina, and then, like we said, let's say they lose to whoever in the first game of the SEC tournament, then, you know, you're probably going to be sliding down to the 2 line. Like, I think that's pretty understandable. But elsewhere, like we mentioned with Tennessee, I think still has. I mean, realistically, I think Tennessee and Arkansas. It's probably going to come down to Saturday, perhaps. Um, you know, these are 2 teams that, yeah, like I think that they have so much sort of forward possibilities at this point based on how they finish the season and because their resumes are just looking so much better now. So yeah, it's exciting, and that's where everything could come down to pairings in the tournament, and that's what's going to be the most fascinating part. So
4 seeds I have in this order. Providence, which has got a really interesting resume. The predictive computers don't love them. I've all got them around 30, but the body of work is pretty impeccable. 4 losses and a lot of wins, probably 7 wins over teams that are heading to the tournament. In fact, I would say all 7 of those are close to locks, although Xavier might not be. Xavier could play its way out. UCLA got a weird resume. It's 22-6 in what I think is a weird Pac-12. It's beaten Arizona, Villanova in a road win over Marquette. And then you got the Razorbacks. The must-bus, in my opinion, has cracked the 4-seed party for the time being, followed by Illinois. I don't know what bracket matrix has this morning. But to me, it's, yeah, you could say Arkansas is a 5 seed, but I'm not buying it, and I don't think the committee would right now either.
bracket matrix updated as of yesterday, and I think that was after last night's games, but were the brackets updated? You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. Arkansas was the final 4 seed on bracket matrix. And just real quickly, some people know what we're talking about with bracket matrix, but just for reference, bracket matrix is not one bracket. it is a combination of basically all the, you know, reputable bracketologists out there in terms. I mean, we're talking what 20 plus people here, 25 plus people. More than that, I think maybe at this point. Yeah, I was gonna say it's higher now. I don't even know how many brackets it is. It's a lot of brackets. So that is what we want to point out is it's combining the average seed and those kind of things. And so that is if you want to literally go through and check out 50 plus brackets, go to bracketmatrix.com and you can click on each individual one and see where the team is slotted, and you can see it in number form across the board there. So Arkansas is the final 4 seed on there as of now. If you look at it in terms of average seeding, Arkansas 4.47. Behind them with the top 5 seeds, Houston at 4.62, UConn at 4.82. Then it's Texas 5.11, Alabama 5.53. So I'm kind of with you too. And look, this is not my SEC bias shining through, but because Arkansas is now in a position where I don't think that they are. I keep saying this, and I got to keep catching myself because I'm like, if they could play someone in the SEC tournament, let's say let's say Missouri makes a big run here, and all of a sudden just goes on a huge run and makes it to the semis or something, and you lose, then okay, then that's going to knock you perhaps a little bit. But I think when you compare it to the teams behind them, so if you're Arkansas, you're rooting against Houston at this point, which Houston plays. Hold on, I gotta make sure I got this right. Houston plays Memphis this weekend, right? So that's a big game there, because especially if you're Memphis, right? I mean, if you're Memphis, which I think they're at this point, they're gonna start to feel a little bit more confident. But if you win that one, you're in, pretty clearly, in my opinion. So that's a significant game if you're looking around. But for Arkansas too, I mean, this is what we've talked about so much over the past several weeks, is because Arkansas's schedule, the way it's kind of played out, they have just been able to avoid, any of those bad losses here over the past whatever, like that they haven't been in a position because they've just played so many good teams. And really, since February the 5th, when they played Mississippi State, they've been in a scenario where every single game minus the Missouri game, which they won, no, if they had lost any of those, which they lost the one to Alabama, none of them really knocked them at all, because those are all teams that are, still pretty high up there in terms of the metrics. Even if Florida, Mississippi State aren't in right now, they're still teams that aren't, a bad loss. So I think that is, that's why I think Arkansas will wind up certainly as a top 4 seed. And then I think it's playing the what if game with them, just as we've done with all the other teams. It's okay. Let's say Arkansas were to beat Tennessee on Saturday. They go in, make a run to the SEC championship, which more than likely would involve beating one of the other 4 teams again. Then it's like, okay, well, what could Arkansas start to get in that 2 conversation or something like that? I think there's so many scenarios that can play out for a team like Arkansas, because of all the momentum they have, and because the dominoes line up to where, they can get more quality wins because they can beat Tennessee and add another one on there. So yeah, I think Arkansas, just like we said with the other 3, in a really, really good spot right now.
Well, you see the homework I've done, which is I put probably a couple dozen hours into this over the last couple of weeks. The one thing I did not include that I think is important, and I looked this up as you were speaking, non-conference strength of schedule does matter. Arkansas was 187. It didn't really do anything out of the league, lost to Hofstra. It does have 2 quad 2 losses. One of those was Vanderbilt, which is barely a quad 2 loss, or quad 3, excuse me. 2 quad 3 losses, and Vanderbilt could end up being a quad 2 loss. So just, if you're looking at that, like the 2 glaring things on Arkansas's resume are the 2 quad 3 losses and the 187 non-conference strength of schedule. And that latter is kind of what limits their altitude.
I was about to ask a question, and I think it's going to lead us down a rabbit hole, so I don't know if I should ask it or not. I'm not going to ask it. It's a non-SEC related question.
You can't do that.
Okay. I've heard a lot of people ask about Gonzaga, and I know we're going way back here, but let me ask you this question, because people have asked this question. I know the answer, but I'm curious what you think. A lot of people are always asking about Gonzaga and saying their resume, right? Like, what is it about their resume that is so appealing? You know what I mean? Like, and that's not me knocking them. I'm telling you right now, they're fantastic when you watch them play. But people ask this question all the time. And I think some people do better than others explaining why it is that Gonzaga is still considered probably the top seed, even though, once again, they're playing in the conference they play in. We all know this, but I have seen SEC fans, and again, this is not Arkansas related. This is just I've seen SEC fans mention this in our comments before about Gonzaga. Why is it that they are so, you know, when basically what more than half their wins have come from quad four, right? And I think people ask that all the time, and I'm just curious how you look at that.
Okay, there's two things. When I'm judging a team outside the power structure, I look hard at the predictives because they don't have an opportunity a lot of times to beat. Now, I'm going to refute part of this in a minute, okay? But they don't have the opportunities that Alabama has to rack up good wins. And I do think margin of victory matters. Number one in all three of them. BPI, Ken Pomeroy, Jeff Sagarin.
Yeah.
The WCC is also stronger than it's been in maybe our lifetimes. I mean, you got St. Mary's is really good. You've got San Francisco's pretty good. BYU's good. And you've got some other teams out there in the weeds behind them that aren't bad either. You look at quality wins, beat Texas Tech on a neutral floor. Same with UCLA. Beat Texas, beat St. Mary's. 2 wins over San Francisco, which I think is going, and 2 over BYU, which might be. So, look, they challenge themselves out of conference. Although the non-conference strength of schedule this year is 120, which doesn't make any sense to me, given who they
And their
play.
overall strength of schedule is 72 right now, correct? That's what you have on the sheet.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think with teams like that, you've got to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you're not supposed to consider past years, but goodness gracious, they were within one game of winning the national title last year. I think any general questions that you have based on common sense about how good Gonzaga is, I think have been answered pretty decisively in the last couple of years.
I was going to say, that's why, because I know people, and they've asked this every year, right? Like, this isn't just the first year people have asked this about them in terms of, well, they don't play anyone. Well, I think that's something that has to go beyond, just the normal sort of setup in terms of how you view a team, right? Like, there's more to it than just looking at, okay, well, more than half their wins are in quad four. Well, they don't play an SEC schedule. Like, they don't. So I think that's always something to keep in mind, because I have seen people, and some people are just asking to ask, and we understand that, but some people are also like, well, they're not that good, and I'm just like, you can't necessarily go that route. I think you got to also keep in mind we are trying to do this, and it's not just always based on the data. It's who are the best teams, right? And that's what you have to remember here with them. Like, I get it. They play in the WCC, and we've seen people make this argument before, but it's just like, you also understand you're trying to see the best teams here, and people will have different opinions on Gonzaga, and certainly they're not the Gonzaga of last year, but this is still a one-line team right now. So,
well, and let me say this again for the people who may not have heard it the first time. We are looking this as if we are the committee and trying to figure out, we know what the committee looks for. We've got everybody's results in front of us. Like if you say Arkansas is better than a 4 seed, you know what? You're probably right. But if you expect Arkansas to get more than a 4 seed right now, if the field is seeded, you have got misplaced expectations. So that's the point we're making in case people didn't catch it the first time.
I was going to say, my Gonzaga comment was not necessarily in relation to Arkansas. I want to make sure I said that clear. It was just something I was thinking of as I was looking at these resumes, because what I was going to say was, when you look at strength of schedule right now, you're looking at, if you're trying to compare some of these teams, that's what I was going to bring up. Duke's at a 74. They're considered a, two seed right now, I guess. Gonzaga's a 72. And then if you want to start putting like an Arkansas's at 62, Arizona's at a 60. So that's when I started, my mind started going. I was like, okay, well, let's just throw this in right now, because I know people have asked about it before. So it was not in relation to me saying that Gonzaga and Arkansas should swap spots. So listen, I'm on the bus, but I didn't need too many 0 bars to the point to where I've lost my mind just yet. But yes, that's just kind of my point. So.
We taking it easy on the corn nuts today?
When you have too many corn nuts,
Do we want to go there?
Folks.
All right. 5 seeds I've got in this order, and these are really tricky. Connecticut, which has slipped a little bit lately, but it's got some really good wins. A lot of good wins, in fact. Houston, which, God help you if you know what to do. Then everybody's putting Houston around the 5 line, and so I just, like a lemming, followed through. Houston has got no wins against a team that's in the tournament for sure. Houston's best 2 wins are SMU and Oregon on a neutral floor. Oregon, no way would be in today, and I think is going to have a hard time making it without winning the tournament. And SMU, I have SMU in barely, although I may be in the minority. Followed by Alabama. I've still got Alabama on the 5 line, and mostly because the resume. The strength of resume metrics, although I might need to rethink this. KPI's got them at 11, and strength of resume on ESPN's got them at 21. I may have Alabama a seed line too high, but wins in order. Gonzaga neutral, Baylor, Tennessee, Arkansas, Houston, LSU, all in Tuscaloosa, Miami on a neutral floor, Florida on the road. Again, I don't care where you are on the bracket. I don't know that anybody can match those wins. We know about the bad losses. I've got behind them St. Mary's, which the computers had a little lower. I guess that's my primary thing. I don't know. What's Bracket Matrix got Alabama at this morning?
Number 5.
Okay, so I'm not on an island there. Yeah, I still think Alabama's a 5.
Yeah.
I've got them one ahead of St. Mary's for the last
That's what
5.
Bracket Matrix has. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know what else we can say. Houston's really interesting. I think Houston needs to beat somebody.
Memphis.
Yeah, I think that would help because then that would take away that thing. But, I mean, the computers love them. BPI's got them too. BPI is my least favorite of all these, by the way. Pomeroy's got them 6. Sagarin's got them 4. I look at the games and the margins of victory. I don't really understand it, but that's what they are. They finally got a quad 1 win, by the way.
Yeah, I mean they're still 26-4, and that's 26-4 with no bad losses. As we said, that carries weight. But yeah, I don't really have a lot to add on this part of it because it's like Alabama. We've talked about this many times in terms of their resume and just how wild it is. But yeah, so I mean, good wins, not so good losses at times, but great strength of schedule. Great group of wins, and yeah, so I think Alabama, we'll see what maybe their potential is to rise up, but I don't think it's that much just based on just kind of the overall thing and some of those losses they've had. Sure, if Alabama wins the SEC tournament, we can use that caveat for everything at this point. If they win the SEC tournament, then maybe your conversation changes, but right now, yeah, that sounds about right to me. 5 or maybe a 6, depending on, like we said, what happens. So.
Yeah, I think Alabama's done so much good and bad. I don't think that seed line budges much, barring winning the whole thing in Tampa. Yeah. But okay, 6s I've got in this order: Texas, LSU, Ohio State, Iowa. Some teams there. Well, Ohio State's not been playing well lately. LSU, the computers and most people have had them a 6 all along. I've been reluctant to bring them up because they're 20-10 overall, 2-8 on the road. But this is where we start to get in the territory where teams really have some flaws. Iowa, a team that's really hard to judge, but finally got a big win last night. Or was it Michigan? The computers love Iowa. I don't think that's a very controversial bunch of 6 seeds there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's kind of interesting to think about, right? When if you look at Bracket Matrix right now, Auburn's the last 1 seed. Tennessee's the last 3 seed, Arkansas is the last 4 seed, Alabama's the last 5 seed, LSU's the last 6 seed. So, there is that potential to drop down, but we also said I think there's also the potential for some of these teams to move up. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add on this one either. I mean, LSU kind of is where they, I don't think that's much of an argument there, depending on, again, the caveat, adding that in, certainly they can move up, I think, in that scenario, but, what does Saturday's game mean? I think that's an interesting thought with LSU and Alabama. And how that factors into the equation here. So I think that's kind of a game that maybe on paper doesn't look huge, but it does give one of those teams another nice win. So I think that one is maybe more important than people think. And then it comes back to because would you rather be a 5 seed or rather be a 6 seed? It's kind of one of those things sometimes where you sort of think about that, and it's like, well, if you want your path to the Final Four or something, it's just I know we can play those games, but it's just kind of one of those things where, well, do you want to avoid the 1 seed? Do you want? I don't think this year really is there that huge of a difference. Like really, when you think about it, I don't know. I mean, because these 2 seeds are dang good. So like we said, it's that top 8 as it stands right now: Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, Auburn, Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, Wisconsin. I mean, that's a pretty good group of teams right there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much variation there is, and that's why, again, is there much of a difference between a 5 or 6? I don't really know, but yeah. So LSU about where you think, and we'll see what they can do in Tampa.
We've got an SEC bingo so far: 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6 seeds. And this is where it stops. There's not a 7.
Yeah.
I've got USC. I've got Michigan State, which has really started to fall a little bit, but locked in a bunch of good wins. Colorado State, Seton Hall in that order. Any comments here? I don't think there's anything notable
I
about
won't
any
have
of these
anything
teams.
to add until we get. I'm more interested in where do you have Florida and those teams right now?
Okay, let's speed through this. 8, I've got Murray State, Iowa State, which has really started to fall, and I think could 7 and 10 in the Big 12. I don't know how problematic that is. Marquette, TCU in that order. 9s, I've got Boise State, San Diego State, San Francisco, Davidson. There's a lot of differing opinions on some of those teams. I think I've got Boise lower than most, but they're all right around each other in the computers, and I think that matters for those leagues. 10s, I've got Michigan, Creighton, Wake Forest, Xavier.
Okay.
I'm
I'm gonna let you roll through the rest of these because I think there's a lot of debate on these, but I think we'll have a much clearer picture on Saturday. Yeah.
But I have done my research on everything I've got in front of me to make my decision is up to date through Thursday night for what, just for people to know. 11s, I've got Miami, Memphis, Notre Dame, and Rutgers. Rutgers is going to be really controversial. Some people don't have them in. Some people got them squarely in. You can look at the computers. The computers don't like them, but I think the thing to me is if you beat Purdue, you win at Wisconsin, you beat Illinois, Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan State, Michigan, and Indiana on the road. They're 3 games above 500, 5 games. That's, to me, a tournament. Being in the tournament is can you beat other tournament teams, and they've checked that box. So to me, Rutgers deserves to be there. That's going to be a point of contention for others. The next 4 I've got, I think the line stops probably around 47 to 48, depending on whether bids are stolen. I've got Wyoming, Loyola Chicago, SMU, and BYU in that order. Wyoming has really fallen. And this is where people have big differences of opinion. I've got North Carolina out, as well as Indiana. North Carolina's got to beat somebody at some point. I think people look at the quads. The only team North Carolina's beaten that's going to the tournament's Michigan. Best 2 wins outside that are Virginia Tech. Anyway, I go in order of teams. So I've got SMU and BYU. One of those is going to be the last one. And then I go Carolina, Indiana, VCU, Florida, 49 to 52. With Virginia Tech a pretty interesting 53.
So here's what it comes down to. If Florida beats Kentucky, I think they're in. Would you agree with that?
As of today, yeah. No, go and lose to somebody in the tournament, first round. Other teams have a good week, then you're not. But, yeah, I think that if Florida beats Kentucky on Saturday, you'd have a hard time convincing me that Florida does not belong there, even if some other teams win.
If they beat Kentucky, they're going to wind up as a what seed, probably in the SEC tournament. We don't have to go through the whole thing, but it would probably be, well, because it's going to depend on the other stuff too, right? So trying to think of what they're going to wind up as if
they beat Kentucky. They'd be the 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So yeah, I think you're right. So in either scenario there, let's see, that's going to put you up against.
That's going to put you against the Wednesday night winners, and then if you win that, you got a chance to beat either Arkansas or Kentucky.
Well, depending on how, yeah, any of those potential options, yeah. So yeah, I think if Florida gets to if they beat Kentucky and they win their first game, they are a lock. Is that probably fair to say?
Barring losing to a Wednesday night team. I think you get that win, and then I'll say you lose. Yeah, see, if Florida beats Kentucky, they're going to be a 5 or 6 in the SEC tournament probably.
So then if they win one, they're in the semis, correct?
Yes, but here's the problem. You're going to be playing either Missouri, Ole Miss, Vandy, Georgia.
Right.
Now Vandy probably doesn't kill you, but any of the others is a bad loss. And then that's when you get into what's everyone else done. That's my point is I think if you beat Kentucky and then you win that first game in the second round, then I think you're okay because you've avoided the bad loss.
Right.
And if you lose to Auburn, Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, I don't think anybody's going to hold that against you at that point. It's just do the other bubble teams around you rise up and have big weeks. That's
the thing is I think you feel comfortable if you beat Kentucky and win the first SEC tournament game. But that's also around, like you said, if 5 teams steal bids, then that bubble starts shrinking, and it's just one of those things. But so I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't even really need to add anything else. I think for Florida, it's very simple. You have to beat Kentucky. If you beat Kentucky, things get a lot easier. If you don't beat Kentucky, things get a lot harder. So,
as for everybody else, the winner of Mississippi State and A&M has a fighting shot going into the tournament. I think the loser has to just about run the table, or at least get to the finals.
Mississippi State and Texas A&M right now?
The predictive computers love State more. State's beaten Arkansas, Alabama. The resume computers have got them just the same.
A&M's also beaten Arkansas and Alabama, right?
Yeah, and also beaten Notre Dame, which is barely in. Also beaten Florida.
I'm just curious.
State's better on the State's 5-5 on the road. I'm sorry, State is 1-8 on the road. A&M's 5-5. Strength of schedule: Mississippi State 4, A&M 50. I didn't go all out this morning on that. State's also lost 13 games overall, and A&M's lost 11. When I did this a couple of days ago, I had State higher in the pecking order. And I still think I got them there, but I'm not sure. When you dig into who they beat, I think what's better for the SEC. Well, I don't know. One team gets a decent win, and then the other team is gonna have to do a lot of work and hope for the best elsewhere. We mentioned South Carolina. I think that. Let's see. That Carolina's got. Auburn. Well, I mean, look. Beat Auburn on the road, and then maybe they're getting into the the A&M State fringe of the conversation, but you got to do that first, and I'm not feeling great about that.
Yeah, that's why I think we'll have that discussion if they beat Auburn. Until then, it's not really a discussion at this point. But
yeah, I'd have to really think about A&M State, but again, it doesn't matter till they win more games.
Right, and whoever wins on Saturday, then we can look at it a little bit better and know that, okay, what do things look like for this team? Because whoever loses, you're pretty much right. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Here's another interesting one. Oklahoma has got really good wins. Texas Tech, Arkansas, Iowa State, Florida. I mean, not really good, but fairly good. But what do you do with the team that's 6-11 in the Big 12?
I was gonna say, yeah, they have they are on the opposite end for me of teams that have played their best basketball at the wrong time. They played it early in the season. I don't know if they're playing their best right now, but we'll see.
But it's not for Iowa State's 7-10 in the Big 12 also. That's another one to watch that
Yeah.
I don't know if they fall completely. To me, I think the locks at this point, I don't know, they probably got 30 teams or so.
Yeah.
I think everybody up through Murray State's a lock. I've got Iowa State ahead of Marquette. I might flip those now that I look at it. In fact, I think I would. TCU is pretty close. Yeah, right around those teams we got as 8s. That's where you start to, like, if somebody really stumbles, you could find yourself on the wrong side of things.
Well, what we do know is 6 teams in the SEC are in. They're locks. No one's fallen out. So that's a good place to be in. Just a matter, can you get more in at this point? So
I think both our alma maters have been eliminated. Well, no.
I think you're right.
Yep, that's true. So
we won't tell people who they are.
What if they can guess?
It's not Tennessee State.
Neither of us went to SEC schools.
No, we didn't.
But we did stay in state.
That is true. Before we wrap up, though, I do want to say something. We are going to hit 1,000 followers via this video, probably, or maybe before this video goes up. But I feel like this is like the state of the union here. Like we just, really, we just want to thank everyone because it's just been in the past month. Like it's funny to think, like, right? Like we kind of doubled everything we've done in the past month or so, and it's pretty remarkable. And yeah, it's fun, and we're glad people enjoy this. And even if you don't, then we still appreciate you watching. And I promise we don't have any ill will towards any team in the SEC. We just kind of, we just talk SEC basketball and all of our other SEC sports. If you've subscribed for a while, we know we got videos, football and baseball now. And yeah, it's just, we appreciate everyone, man. It's pretty awesome to know that there are 1,000 people out there that would hit that subscribe button because they want to. Again, maybe even if you don't love us, I guess you still want to hear what we have to say. But there's some value in that, I suppose. So yeah, we appreciate everyone, and we try to thank you all in the comments and such. And so yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for that. So,
Ely.
Yes, everybody love everybody.
We love
Jackie
you,
Moon.
even the critics.
Jackie Moon. Yeah, no, and that's the thing is like I've said before, I do want to make that clear, and I get it. I mean, that if we say things about certain teams, hey, it's usually just in the heat of whatever we're talking about. I promise we don't care any agenda against anyone. That's just, as we've said before, if you want that, I promise you can find it elsewhere. There are plenty of channels and coverage that does that, but we don't want to be like anyone else. We want to just call it like we see it, and we want to leave the bias out of it of any sort. So yeah, so I get it. I mean, it's fun. Sports are fun to talk about, and not everyone has to agree on everything, So that we don't listen. We don't, just because we say something, you don't have to agree with us. Like it's everybody has the right to their opinion, and I think if everyone agreed with everyone on everything, things would be very boring. So
we're here to be the kings of fun.
The Kings of Fun T-shirts coming soon to a
convenience store near you.
I was trying to think of a gas station. But while you're there, pick up 0 bars, corn nuts, and Kings of Fun T-shirts, merch. That's going to be known as the gas station guys. All of our stuff will be available in only gas stations because of the Must Buzz comments and the candy bar comments and all this. But there you go. So
my brother in high school had a close group of friends. He's still close to, by the way, and they had a Christmas gift swap, and the condition was you had to buy everything from a gas station convenience store. So
not some bad options out there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, let a lot of mesh hats.
Yeah. So there you go.
Hey, seriously, thank you for subscribing. Tell a friend. That helps us out tremendously. We'll be at 1,000. That'll change some things for us. Have a great weekend. We will be back next week. We don't even know what we're going to do yet, but we know we're going to do a lot of it. We all SEC teams coming. We got our we're going to pick our East and West teams in the SEC. We're going to pick 13-man rosters for each. So we're going to have our exhibition game that we'll have in Fayetteville. I think that's where we should have it.
Because we have so much to cover next week, I'm not gonna put Chris on the spot here, but we may try to see if we can do our reaction video, which you guys know normally goes up on Monday. We may see if we can sneak that in, a short one or something on this weekend just after the games, because we got so much to cover next week. So we'll think about that, but you guys know now. Just hit us up. It'll be one of those. I promise. So
NCAA tournament week, my family's in Dollywood and I'm here.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I got nothing but time coming.
We're gonna get Weekend Chris. Oh boy, Weekend Chris. There's another T-shirt. So
that's no more exciting than Weekday Chris.
The 14 After Dark. Another shirt there. So.
This is how boring I am. When my wife and family are gone, all I do is work more. That's the honest truth.
Yeah. It's not work if you love it.
It's not work if you love it. We love you guys. ELE. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.